On this episode, we're going to talk to Chris about what makes him a car enthusiast. It's a great conversation. Stay tuned. All right, so I'm joined today by Chris, who's an avid listener. Thank you for that, Chris, and also thank you for the review you left. I very much appreciate that. So tell us what got you into cars and what kind of attracted you to them.
All right, so a little backstory. So I got my love for cars from my papa on my mom's side. Um, he lives in my hometown is a one red light little town, no cops. So he was always into drag racing, all kinds of cars, all different kinds of cars. I actually started driving around like 10 or 11 years old because like I couldn't reach the pedals, but I would sit in his lap, he would shift, and I'd drive around town, going, doing different things. And then when I was finally able to push the clutch pedal all the way to the floor, it was my turn to chauffeur him around, and it was a lot of fun.
So I actually had a similar story. My dad worked at a lumber yard, and I don't know if I told this story. I might have told this story in the Dodge Power Wagon episode. When my dad would go and work on forklifts, like on the weekend, he would let me drive his truck around the lumber yard. And so that was kind of how I started. But I was like kind of like you. I had to sit, but I had to sit on the very edge of the seat to reach the pedals. Right. That's cool. So your grandpa, your papa,
Papa, yeah, Papa.
was into drag racing. Now, what car did you get to drive of his? Was he letting you drive his drag race car? No, I
No,
would assume not.
no, that one was long gone by the time I was able to start driving.
Okay.
But I started off driving 87 Nissan hardbody that he had.
Okay.
And he also had a 86 El Camino,
Nice.
and I drove that around more, like around town, like when I couldn't reach the clutch all the way.
Right.
I would
You have the
I would drive
350
the El
in it?
Camino around. 305.
305. Okay.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
But
Yeah, the 305 was pretty common back then too, I guess. So what are you daily driving now?
so right now, I have a 2015 Honda Civic LX base model. All the cars that I have now are actually I've inherited
Mhm.
over the years from my grandparents and great grandparents. So this Honda Civic is actually my grandpa's car on my dad's side. She used to trade up cars every single year. Um, she always had Honda Accords, and she would just get a base Honda Accord, and she'd get it right before summer when I would come down to visit, because she knew I loved it, and she gave me the keys, and I'd take off down uh, the road, and I'd break it in for her, and
Nice.
and so this was her car, and I've been just trying to drive it around. I can't really find my a new car that I really am loving right now.
Hmm.
So this one gets great gas mileage, and you know,
Do you prefer Japanese cars, or 'cause, like you grew up driving American kind of cars, obviously, right? Do you prefer Japanese cars now?
I do. I
Yeah.
For most of the cars that I have had are Japanese. In fact, if I can think about it, the only one that have that is I've owned that was not Japanese is the truck that I have now. It's my great grandfather's 1979 Ford F100
Right.
Custom.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful truck, all original farm truck. Um, he garage kept it when he wasn't using it. So, but yeah, I've always loved Japanese cars and Honda and all that.
No, and so I've recently more started to appreciate Japanese cars because I grew up very much American cars and stuff like that, and I have an American truck now, obviously, but kind of like so. For instance, your Civic has what probably a 1.8 or a 2 liter in it.
It's the 1.8,
1.8,
1.8 with
and
a CVT.
Right.
Of
But
course,
like even then, just how much efficiency and power they managed to squeeze out of such small engines. And really, like I was reading, like apparently, so in the '90s, Japan was going this huge boom, right? And they had so much money, and it was almost unfair how good they could make their cars versus the Americans that had so much more money. But obviously, that really kickstarted their development because even though the economy fell off, they still had already made up all this ground, right?
yeah, yeah, and the '90s model cars. That's kind of where I really started like modifying and messing around with them. Was the it's a our first one was a 1992 Honda Civic,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then it just kind of blossomed from there.
So, what's your dream car?
Okay, it is a 2008 Honda S2000 Laguna Blue,
Okay.
and I like a black interior with red seats, which is really hard to find. They had a option where they had an all red interior, and that was just that's too much.
Yeah. No, I
But
agree.
the black, dash and everything, but with red seats, it looks amazing.
So, why an S2000? Is it the lightness?
Um, I have always loved Hondas,
Mm-hmm.
and I know people make fun of the VTEC and all that, but um, it's I love the way that it revs. I
Mm-hmm.
love high revving cars and um, just the way it looks and the styling of it and everything. And then Honda being a rear-wheel drive, it only comes in manual. Uh, it was amazing. I love that car.
It's weird to me that I agree. I love the S2000. I think the VTEC is not underrated, but there's definitely people. There are a faction of car enthusiasts that really don't like it, and then there are obviously the Honda people who do like it. And I think I really appreciate the technology behind it. There are times I think people put the wrong exhaust on Hondas.
Yes, very
And
much.
because I remember, especially like when I was in high school, so we're talking 2000, early 2000s, right? That people would put exhausts on these Honda Civics, which is all well and good, but too much exhaust. And then I remember some would go by us and they would sound like two killer bees inside the hood fighting each other. And that
Yep.
was always my problem with them, right? Because I don't have a problem with the Civic, and I don't have a problem with modifying any car. I think you there are too many cookie cutter cars that if you're into cars, you want to personalize it, and I think that's your way of personalizing it. That's great. But so the my original point, sorry, the S2000 was very similar to the Miata or the MX-5,
Right.
and how the MX-5 took off and is obviously still around now, whereas the S2000 was almost like a niche car. Like it was almost rare to see one, and I never understood why Mazda, being a small car company, made this car and it took off, whereas Honda, being a big car company, made almost an identical style car and it never did.
I think personally, the biggest thing would probably be the price.
Okay.
I think they were really expensive,
Okay.
and the I remember going looking at one at the Honda dealership, and it was kind of like a exclusivity. Like the dealers wouldn't even pay you any attention if you looked like you were too
Right.
young. They wouldn't even give you a second glance at it. So I think that had a lot to do with it as well. And I think Honda just probably didn't make as many. Whereas, the Miata, they've had them for since what,
Since
the 80s,
90.
I think it
Well,
was.
yeah, early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think since they've been around for a lot longer, they could,
That's
um,
true.
you know,
Especially like
it's a
if,
little bit
if you're
cheaper.
a Honda dealer and you're looking at young people looking at the S2000 and writing them off, it was kind of a young person's car.
Mhm.
Like you weren't going to convert Mercedes and BMW owners over to an S2000,
Right. Yeah.
right? You were going to get people probably who maybe had a little bit more than Miata money who wanted the same kind of feeling. So
Right.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. You owned motorcycles,
I have.
still do?
Unfortunately not. I was in a pretty bad wreck.
Okay.
on my last motorcycle, and I really want another one. Man, I want another motorcycle. But my mom has told me, she says, if you get another motorcycle, I will burn it to the ground. So, well,
That's
that's
fair.
not fair.
That's not fair. So what ones have you owned?
So my first one was a 2006, I believe, Honda CBR 600RR.
Hmm.
It was red with black striping. A lot of fun. I rode that thing everywhere. Um, I did lay it down one day coming home uh, from Merritt Island going home to Orlando.
Okay.
I was coming out and hit a little patch of sand, and it just kind of slid out from under me. So I took it back to my apartment, put it in the garage, took all the panels off, matte blacked it, and then kept on riding with it.
Nice.
Um, so then, after a little while of that, I got a cruiser. And when I say cruiser, I put it in kind of like it was a very cheap cruiser. It was a Honda Shadow.
I have a
It was an
shadow
old,
right now.
yeah,
I've had two shadows actually.
yeah. But it was a fun bike. Took a little bit getting used to because I was so used to riding sport bikes
Yeah.
that switching over to a cruiser was a little difficult for me, and I was always about going as fast as I possibly could, and
Okay.
80 miles an hour was not fast enough. So
So I think like that is probably like akin to whether you start like on an Android phone or an Apple phone, and that's kind of the way
yes,
like because I have always had cruisers. I started on cruisers, but I rode one sport bike, and I was like, I this is too much.
yeah,
It was too much work. Like to me, like I felt like I was constantly having to be on top of it to keep it from basically trying to wipe out on me.
hmm
So like yeah, like
yeah,
I literally just got off my shadow. I rode it from work or back home from work, and yeah, like to me, every time I go out for a ride, I'm like I just want to lay back against my backrest and just look at the scenery and know that it's gonna stay underneath me.
yep, exactly,
But I never do
yeah,
more than 75, 80 miles an hour anyway. So
yeah. Yeah, that was a fun bike. I think if I got another one, it would probably be something similar to that. I probably wouldn't go for another sport bike. I think I
yeah,
would learn my lesson on that one.
your mom might let you go with a cruiser, maybe.
With the cruiser. Yeah, if she maybe one with like a trike or something, she'll probably
Yeah,
be
like
like, eh,
the
we'll
Can
see.
Am or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But so then my third one, which was the last one, was a 2012 Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R, and
Nice.
that was one beautiful bike. Bought it brand spanking new. A week and a half in, I was running late to a Easter party at my uncle's house, and I passed somebody on a two-lane road. Didn't realize the front wheel was off the ground, and when it came back down, got the death wobble. And next thing I know, I'm on the other side of the road with the ambulance above me, cutting things off.
Wow.
I'm like, yeah. So it
ZX6R,
was
so
pretty
that'd
fun.
be a 600cc motor, right?
Yep.
And it
Hmm.
still lifted
Yeah,
the
but
front end without even really noticing. Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was. I didn't even. It wasn't like way off the ground. It was
But
just the
enough.
tires
Yeah. Yeah.
just enough that when it came back down, it was all over.
Yeah. If it's one thing if you're expecting to land down being mid wheelie or whatever, but if you weren't prepared for it, that's wow.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that was the other thing is I never really got into that. The wheeling and
yeah. No.
all that
And
stuff. I just
like
drop it a gear.
honestly,
Let's go.
I don't even like when people lane split. Like
Mhm.
I don't like to me I'm when I'm on a motorcycle I am all defensive riding like everyone could be
Right.
trying to hit me at any time. I'm not going to put myself in a position where someone's not going to see me because no one's looking between cars before they change lanes, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and around in Florida, as you know,
Right,
the old
especially
people
Florida with
and the
yeah.
tourists.
The average age is 75, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So last question
All
before I
right.
let you go. What would you say to someone who thinks that cars are just boxes with wheels to get them into cars? So if you wanted to get someone into cars who didn't like cars, what would you say to them?
So I have a struggle with this
Yep.
constantly because my mom is one of these people. She just wants to get in it, start it, go where she's going to go as slowly as she can, and then come back home. Like
Right.
that's all she cares about. And so we recently went car shopping with her, and I said, "All right, what is it that you want?" She said, "Well, I want, you know, the push button start, and I want the lane keep assist and the active cruise control and all that." And I said, "All right, well, let's look at this one." And it had the JBL audio system, the sunroof that you pushed a button, it went from clear to white, and
Okay.
stuff like that. And she fell in love with it. And it, so I think my thing would be to find out what they would love to, what they love about a car,
Mm.
and then kind of show them something that would be kind of like an upgrade, and say, okay, how about this one? So if they want all that stuff, well, you can also get that on like an Hellcat. So,
Yeah.
you know, what
Hellcat's always an
about that?
option.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when you put your foot down, you got that power there. You don't always have to use it, but having that would be great.
Right.
So, so I
Uh,
think the kind of exclusivity of it, trying to sell them on that.
yeah, yeah. So I had one more question,
Okay.
and this is going to go kind of against what you said your dream car is.
All right.
Only because I just had this discussion with someone yesterday. But does it bug you that cars no longer have names? That there's so many just numbers?
Um, not not really, no.
Okay.
I think so. Here's what the names. It was all right. I didn't mind names. When they switched to numbers, most manufacturers did a you kind of knew what they meant. Like a BMW 330 was a 3.3 liter,
Right.
or 3 Series 3-liter inline six.
Right.
But now that they've changed it so much that the 330 now is a 4-cylinder turbo.
Yeah.
So it's um, that kind of
So
bothers
you're
me a little
okay with the
bit.
numbers as long as the numbers mean something?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like to me, like if they took the Civic and said, "No, no, next year we're going to call it the C1," I'd be like, "No, it's a
Yeah.
Civic."
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some cars. That's also another thing is if it's a car that's been around forever, like the
Yeah.
Civic, and then you switch it over to a number, then yeah, that's kind of no. I don't think so.
Right.
But a new car coming out with a number badge, I think it's all right.
And at this by the same token, I'm not okay with manufacturers bringing back old names in a way that had nothing to do with the original, since
Mhm.
such as the new Chevy Blazer,
Yes.
where it's
Yeah.
nothing like the original.
No, no, it's front wheel drive. It's
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I don't like
no.
it, and I've already said Chevy has too many SUVs. I swear they go, hey, there's 2 inches between this SUV and this SUV. We need one that bridges that gap, and it's only 1 inch from this one and that one. And then
Yep.
they just roll that one out, and it's then they just go, okay, well, there's a $10,000 price bridge. This one's going to be 5,000 in between.
Yeah.
And it's just like at some point you got to be like, okay, stop. Like I'm not legitimately fitting a whole other child into that vehicle versus that vehicle.
Right.
If you had the Suburban and then you had, the Equinox, you understood it. Even the Tahoe, like there was enough of a size difference between the Tahoe and Suburban, but the Blazer made no sense. And then now they have the
Right.
Trailblazer again too. On top of that,
Yep.
the Trailblazer tiny. I don't
Uh,
know.
so then you have to kind of keep up with, okay, well, does it go? Oh, and they have the tracks too.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got
Trax, Trailblazer,
tracks, the Trailblazer, the
Equinox,
Equinox, the
Blazer,
Blazer, the
Tahoe,
Tahoe, Suburban.
Suburban. Yeah,
So
it's like
it's like
stop.
this is no, yeah,
Yeah,
this is too
that's
much.
too much. That's stop. Okay, like I get it, but stop. Uh, Thank you for coming on, Chris. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, yes, it was. Thank you. And anytime you want to come back on, let me know.
All right, will do. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks again for listening to the Auto Riff. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or you can email us at theautoriff@gmail.com. Without you, the listener, I'd just be a crazy person talking about cars to myself. I appreciate the support and the conversations with my listeners that this provides. Until next time, everyone drive safe and have a great week.